It is now the most wonderful time of the year. And no, I'm not talking about the holidays. National Novel Writing Month approaches on the horizon, and it's time to once again set out on this action-packed adventure. For the longest, I have been kept out of the field of battle, for I had other things to worry about. But now, with my soul having been sacrificed to student loan debt, I must head out in search of my being through the use of written word. If I am to find myself once more, I must connect with my roots as I did years ago, only this time, I will do it right. But before that, it would be great if you could like this video and share it with some of your creative friends. If you like art and story-related videos/tutorials, don't be afraid to subscribe either. I'm hoping together we can build a creative community that promotes growth for beginner and intermediate creatives, so we can help each other transcend and reach greatness. Now, on to the video. Preptober is probably the most important part of NaNoWriMo, for those who like to plan their stories out before writing. Of course, there are those who don't wish to plan their stories, and there was even a time where I didn't do any planning at all. I just wrote my stories one page after the next. But I eventually found out that that method was not working for me. I would end up being stuck more often than not in writing nonsense with no way of knowing where I was going or what story I was trying to tell. There was no structure. But now, I can't start any story project without some form of planning. I believe that the writer should at least know two major plot points in the story, one closer to the beginning and one closer to the end. Even better if you know how the story actually starts and ends. By having these 2 points, you can trace the character's steps through the story with a destination in mind. For Preptober this year, I want to make sure I had most of the story planned out, so it would be easier for me to write the scenes and reach my word count goal in November. I also wanted to practice setting up a complete story from beginning to end. Now, I'll admit, I do have a habit of over-planning in some situations, thinking all the way back to the origins of the universe. It's just I generally like to understand as much as I can about the story and the world the story takes place in. It is this understanding of the world that I feel helps to develop the plot and the people within the story. But, of course, you can also build your story first and develop the world around what happens in it. No matter your process, I know a tool that can help. Milanote. I've been using Milanote for quite some time, not sponsored by the way, but it is an extremely helpful organization tool for storytelling and world building. Also, it's free for the first 100 note cards, which I have yet to find a word limit for each of the cards. So all in all, no barrier to entry. You can either download it or use it in your browser. Before using Milanote, I would just make a bullet list of potential plot points on a Google Doc or in a composition notebook. Call as rule if I'm lucky. But it was difficult to reorganize without completely restarting, and hard to keep all my data in one place. And I didn't have the space at the time to fill out a bunch of note cards. With Milanote, I can do all of that and more. I can add images to help set the mood. I can throw in some arrows and make dynamic timelines to help organize a complex plot or family tree. And I can make a near infinite number of color-coded symbol stamped sections so that I can separate where I put my plot points and where I keep my character bios. Over the course of this Preptober, I've been using all of this to build a story around a character I originally created for another story. So this will be his life before that other story even happens. I didn't have any detailed backstory for this character originally, so even though I have had him around for a while, I still have to make the entire story from scratch. Which isn't bad, but it has been difficult figuring out what story I wanted to tell with this character. In later videos, I would like to go into detail with how I put together my characters, my plot, and the world building, but for now, I will summarize my struggles during the beginning phase of Preptober. It all began with a blank page and a somewhat realized character. I knew the world, and I knew his future. But writing where he came from was not so simple. The character's name is Hikari, a half-elf and a skilled swordsman. In the future, he's a legend and a hero, well known throughout the lands, but clearly, he didn't start out that way. Figuring out where his legend began was what I needed to do. He needed a villain, he needed allies, and he needed a purpose. Everything that made the original story I had him in interesting is gone. So now, what made his story interesting? This is what I spent the better part of 3 weeks thinking about even before Preptober. I had come up with several different beginnings and potential plots, including war and travel across vast lands. I played with the ideas of cults and dark magic, but each of the plots felt off and uninspired. In some ways, I failed to separate the story from its future, and because of it, I couldn't find a suitable villain. I was stuck at the beginning. Lucky for me, my mind is active all the time. I was never not thinking of the story. So one night before bed, I stared into the abyss, ripping away this story from its future, creating a blank slate for it to grow from. The thing is, I enjoy a bit of darkness in my stories. I can't say exactly why, but darker worlds feel more believable and are more entertaining. With that being said, Hikari had always been a character surrounded by light, a sense of good to combat the evil in the world. Because of this, my original ideas for the plot carried that light from his future to his past, starting his character out at a high, making it difficult to bring him down and have him grow from the experience. The characters around him were also affected by this issue, where they were already at their best based on how I had them set up in the future. But in destroying their futures and exploring the origins of the world they live in, I was able to better map out who they would have been in their early life. I feel that this first phase of story creation is often the hardest, because the possibilities are endless, and most of those endless possibilities can lead to a bad story, at least for me. Jumping into the beginning without first seeing where it leads often ends with me restarting the story entirely. Originally, Hikari was friends with the king. He was an elite warrior, and he lived comfortably and honorably for his kingdom. This is how it was in his future, and this is how I started him off at in this story. So what I needed to do was take away everything he was supposed to be. The king he will follow is not currently in role. While he is a skilled soldier, he has no rank, and he does not live comfortably. While he wishes to live honorably, he doesn't know what that means, and the kingdom he wishes to protect is beyond his reach. This gives room for growth and discovery, and it even gave me a very simple and straightforward villain. The current king. Sure, it's been done before, but so have ancient evils and creatures of the night. For a first story and a first villain, a tyrannical ruler of some kind is not too far-fetched. It's just how I go about it that will make or break the story. Which brings me to my next struggle. Motive and means. This was my hurdle to jump. Still in the beginning, I might add. The questions are, why is the king the antagonist? Why does Hikari care? What exactly is the king doing? And how is Hikari going to stop him? These were the basis of what the story would eventually become. Without it, I don't have a story. Figuring out the motives is not just about why the characters do what they do, but also about why the reader should even care. Being evil for the sake of evil and being good for the sake of good is boring and unrealistic because both require an insane amount of effort to do. And even with motive down, the means of accomplishing each goal needed to be established so that the characters aren't just doing random stuff and magically accomplishing their goals on the side. If the villain needs to build a giant machine, how is he going to build it? And how can the hero stop him from doing so? I needed to figure out what metaphorical machine the king was building, and how it affected Hikari enough for him to want to stop it. It took me a week of juggling ideas, and it wasn't until I used Hikari as a character for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I was able to figure out how things might come together. In short, the king is responsible for Hikari being away from the kingdom. And if Hikari doesn't stop him, then he can never return home, and the one person he loves in this world will be lost forever. On the king's end, his people are suffering, and he will do anything to ensure that they survive and live the long, comfortable lives he feels they should, even if it means hiding the truth from them and hurting those he deems as outsiders. The allies each side collects will have their own motives and agendas as well, complicating things and further developing the story as a whole. I have currently mapped out most of the major plot points of the story already, and I'm going into more detail on the chapter-by-chapter outline while reorganizing the order in which things happen. Won't give away any major secrets and don't want to explain too much of what I have at the moment since things are still changing drastically. Let's just say the middle stuff is giving me a bit of trouble as I organize what each party is doing throughout the story, but let me save that for the next time. I hope this video was helpful to at least one of you out there. If not, let us know in the comments what could be done better. And if you know of other ways we can level up our writing skills, let us know that as well. Also, while you're down there, I would love it if you would subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can see what I do next. But until we meet again, I would just like to say, welcome to Edenwood.